Welcome back to another video. Today, I wanted to try a rather different experiment. I'm going to get technical help from AI and see what kind of answers I get. Now, there is a bunch of AI clients out there, but we're only going to be using 3 today. We'll be using ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and Google Gemini. We'll start with Microsoft Copilot. So this is the AI client that is built right into Windows 11 as well as Windows 10. I have honestly never used this before, and the same thing goes with ChatGPT and Gemini. What I do know is Microsoft really wants you to use Copilot. Pretty much every single feature on Windows is constantly nagging you about, oh, you could try using Copilot with Microsoft Edge or Microsoft Office. They want you to use it so bad that they ended up backporting it to Windows 10. It was originally exclusive to Windows 11. And if I'm being honest, if they could, I feel like Microsoft would definitely try to backport Copilot to even like Windows 8 or Windows 7. But of course, that's basically impossible to do. So I've got a few common technical questions pulled up on my phone. Most of them vary from really basic questions like what's a CPU, what's a firewall, how do I uninstall software, that sort of thing. And then we move up to more complicated issues like hardware and software troubleshooting. Let's start with a simple question. What is an operating system? An operating system, OS, is the essential software that manages the computer's hardware and software resources, acting as a bridge between you and your device. It even goes into like core functions as well. Interesting. Without an OS, your computer would be a pile of parts with no way to communicate. That seems to be a pretty straightforward answer. Now let's ask the same question with ChatGPT, and essentially gives us a pretty similar answer. Now for Google Gemini. And again, a pretty similar answer. So that one's pretty straightforward. RAM and ROM are both types of memory in a computer, but they serve very different purposes. And yeah, that is correct. RAM is volatile, ROM is non-volatile. RAM is faster, ROM is slower. Now let's ask the same question with ChatGPT, and it gives us a pretty similar answer. Main difference is how they store data and how that data can be accessed or modified. In short, RAM helps your computer think and process things fast, while ROM keeps essential, unchanging instructions safe even when the power goes off. And the same question in Gemini. Yeah, pretty much the same answer. Think of RAM as your desk where you keep your papers, books, and tools you're actively working with. Think of ROM as the instruction manual for your desk. Let's ask Copilot, can you explain the type of RAM? RAM comes in several types, each with its own purpose and performance characteristics. SRAM, DRAM, also goes into specialized RAM types. Now let's ask the same question with ChatGPT, and pretty much the same answer. It also goes more in depth about like more uncommon RAM types like RDRAM. And in Gemini, pretty much a similar answer. Next, let's ask, how do I access safe mode? Accessing safe mode depends on your operating system. Press F4 to enter safe mode. Same question in ChatGPT. And gives us a pretty similar answer. And in Gemini, yeah, gives a similar answer. And it actually even explains safe mode for macOS. And Linux as well. How about let's try a more open-ended question like, why is my computer slow? Here's a breakdown of the most common reasons your PC might be dragging its feet. And it goes over some pretty common situations. Too many background programs, startup overload, low disk space or fragmentation, malware or viruses, outdated software and drivers, overheating, insufficient RAM or old hardware. And in ChatGPT, pretty much the same answer. And the same question in Gemini, yeah, similar answer. Now let's ask, how do I double space in Microsoft Word? Pretty straightforward answer. And the same answer in ChatGPT and in Gemini. Yeah, pretty much the same answer. I am starting to notice already that in terms of like more in-depth answers, I'd say Gemini and ChatGPT are like neck and neck. Like, yeah, Copilot's fine, but it really gives you surface level answers. It doesn't really go into more in-depth, which is fine, but if you're trying to solve like a more complicated situation, I do think ChatGPT and Gemini handles it a little better. All right, now let's try asking, how many bits is ECC memory? If I can type correctly, my God. Most systems use 64 bits. ECC adds 7 or 8 extra bits with a total of 72 bits. And ChatGPT, yep, same answer. And in Gemini, it actually compares ECC RAM to standard RAM and what the differences are. Interesting. What is the pin count on a floppy drive? If any of you even know what a floppy drive is. It uses a 34-pin connector for data and control signals. 34-pin. Also goes into more in-depth power and data information. And 34 pins. It's interesting. This is like the first one that Gemini has given us where it's pretty short and it doesn't really go into any further details. And it gave us an answer of power supply issues, which is usually the most common cause. Okay, and then in ChatGPT pretty much gives us a pretty similar answer. And then in Gemini, similar answer. Mismatch between CPU and motherboard, incorrect orientation, bent pins or debris, counterfeit or mismarked CPU, damaged socket. Yeah, this seems to be a good answer. Gives us a similar answer. I do like how it goes into like more in-depth information, like comparing the sockets of Intel and AMD CPUs. And in Gemini, gives us a similar answer. Gives us a chart of a comparison between Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, boot times, resource usage, responsiveness, gaming performance, developer and productivity speed. How about asking the same question with ChatGPT? I do like how it mentions right off the bat there isn't a single clear-cut answer. And again, it does go into more extensive details. And in Google Gemini, question of which operating system is faster is complex and doesn't have a single definite answer. How about let's throw in a curveball, like how does quantum computing work? Quantum computing works by harnessing the strange and powerful principles of quantum mechanics like superposition, entanglement, and interference. Okay, whatever that means. I like how right off the bat it uses words like strange and powerful. ChatGPT. Yeah, I like how it gives us a more detailed answer. Yeah, gives a pretty similar answer to ChatGPT. I have heard that AI can have some issues answering questions regarding the future, so how about let's try this one. What will computers look like in 20 years? Kind of gives us a more open-ended answer. And in ChatGPT, likely to be mind-blowing with significant advancements in hardware, software, and user experience. I do like how it mentions right off the bat it's hard to predict every detail. While with Copilot, it just gives us an answer like, I don't really know what computers are going to look like in 20 years. Here's what they might be. And then ChatGPT just like states right off the bat like, hey, I'm not a fortune teller. And yeah, Gemini gives us a pretty similar answer. All right, let's try one more question. Something like, should you use Microsoft Edge? Why do I feel like this answer is a bit biased considering it's coming from Copilot? Is Microsoft Edge worth using? Yes, it definitely is. In ChatGPT, yeah, it gives us a much better answer. Whether or not you should use Microsoft Edge depends on your specific needs. And then in Gemini, yeah, gives us a pretty similar answer. Whether you should use it depends on your priorities and how you use your computer. So I think we'll end it here. I didn't really have any set goals with this experiment. I just thought it would make for a pretty fun video. And from what I've seen so far throughout this video, I do think ChatGPT and Gemini are neck and neck in terms of the best answers. Because I like how it gives you like more in-depth information, and there's a little less bias compared to Copilot, where it kind of gives you more surface level answers. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.